I am Pablo Yañez, and we are here today to talk about Poll Everywhere. A couple of comments about Poll Everywhere for those of you that might not be that familiar with it. William & Mary has a campus license for Poll Everywhere, which means that it's free for you and your students to use. It's not free to the institution, but you get the benefit from it, and your students get the benefit from it. PE is Poll Everywhere is familiar to a large segment of students, which is fantastic because unless you're teaching a first year class, it's very likely that your students have already used Poll Everywhere, which gets you over the hump of the learning curve, right? It integrates with Blackboard. So if you want to do graded and ungraded activities, or if you want to do attendance like we'll be doing today, it integrates into Blackboard so your students can track how they are doing, as well as you can in the Grade Center in Blackboard. Students and you log in with your William & Mary credentials. Students don't have to generate new accounts. It's single sign-on. It's the same email and password that they use every day. All right, so that's Poll Everywhere in a nutshell. We're not going to get into the integration of Poll Everywhere into Blackboard. I'm going to give you a resource. Briar, if you could drop that in the chat line. It's a nice PDF that talks about how you get Poll Everywhere set up in Blackboard. And that doesn't apply only to attendance, but that'll get you going. So Poll Everywhere attendance. It's a new feature. It was rolled out literally about less than, I think, 10 days ago. Right now, what I'm presenting is still in the early stages of deployment. I had a nice conversation with our Poll Everywhere rep yesterday. I made some suggestions about how this might change. They are very keen on updating this and making it more user-friendly, especially for faculty. So who is it for? And this is generally speaking, this is my perception right now. Who should be considering this as a way of doing attendance for their courses? First of all, I really think that it's for medium to large classes. Obviously, you know, I've taught classes that range from 8 people to 110 people. If I'm meeting with a class of 8 people in a small sort of conference room, this is not the tool for you. I've also taught 110 here at William & Mary, and it was nearly impossible for me to keep track of who was attending class and who wasn't. It was in the big, dark, ugly lecture hall with the nosebleed section barely being lit. So that's definitely a target audience. It's also for people where attendance is important to your learning objectives, right? I talk to a lot of faculty. This tends to be a very black and white issue. There are faculty members who think attendance is really important in their classes, and there's faculty members who take the opposite point of view where, you know, the proof is in the pudding, and if students come to the exams and do their other assignments on time and well, attendance for them is not a concern. That's not true for everybody. I know that my wife used to teach language classes, and in those classes, attendance is pretty critical to make sure that students are keeping up to date and learning what they need to do. Maybe right now it might be for more experienced Poll Everywhere users, but it's a big maybe, and maybe I would love to hear your feedback at the end of this presentation to think what you think. We'll give you a QR code for you to give us feedback. Please give us feedback on what you think of this tool. I think Poll Everywhere wants to hear our feedback. Things to keep in mind. This particular function, even though your students have sort of overcome most of the learning curve with Poll Everywhere, this feature will be new. It's only been out for a little bit over a week. It's new to everyone. That means that we might have IT working out some kinks in the background, but it seems to be working fine. It could be a really big time saver in the right situation. So if you need to take attendance and you have a 50-person class even, you know that that's not really feasible. Or if it is feasible, you're eating a huge chunk of your classroom time doing that task. It might not only be strictly for attendance. If you are concerned about some of your students, I know that the deans ask us every semester to sort of let them know if there are students who might be having issues. This might be a way to figure out if a student is having an issue, not in terms of participation grade or attendance per se, but just are they engaged? Are they coming to class? If you're worried about them, it's very hard to do this in a classroom with 110 students. The one caveat that I will give you is everything we're going to cover today, you can do with the old version of Poll Everywhere minus one function that we'll talk about. Okay, so you can still do attendance with Poll Everywhere, old school, without the functionality that's just been added. But this functionality might be important to people. So I jumped ahead. Let me switch over to Poll Everywhere. So has everybody at some point logged into Poll Everywhere? Okay, so let me log out of here. And I will take you. There's one little trick when you log in. Oh, I'm sorry, it's cached. So use your William and Mary email address and use the William and Mary login. Don't create an individual password. That causes people some pains at the very beginning. So what I want to do is I want to go through a couple of attendance activities to show you how this works. So you guys were able to reply to my last poll. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go to a folder that I've set up with some attendance questions, okay? The feature of turning on attendance management or not for right now, and this is one of the things that Poll Everywhere is considering, is turned on and off at the profile level, not at the question level, okay? And I'll explain what that means. So when you click on the icon here for your profile, you will see that there is an attendance button here on the menu. And what you're going to do is you're going to turn on geolocation. Okay, this is what's new to this feature in attendance. When you turn this feature on, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be defining where your classroom that you're teaching in and where you want your students to be in when they do an attendance poll, right? So just because I know that we're all spread out and this is a Zoom session rather than an in-person session, which is really what this is meant for, I've created a couple of locations that will be accepted as in attendance. So for instance, I did my own building, Boswell Hall, in here on lovely cinder block building here. So if I click on edit, it'll show you a map, and I've selected Boswell Hall in the map, and I've given it a radius of 250 feet. Okay. So that means that anybody that's responding needs to be within that 250 feet geofence when they reply. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Everybody good? Give me a thumbs up. All right, good. All right. So since we're not all in the same place, I added Andrews and Chesapeake Hall in VIMS in hopes of catching some of you VIMS people. I added Washington and McLaughlin Street as a different one. So, you know, you can see that here I've selected both of those buildings and put a fence around them. The maximum distance that you can go out is 250 feet. And I added Boswell Hall, as I mentioned before. So those are my profile settings. If you are doing activities where this is important, if you toggle this on, when you do a survey question, students will be asked to check in. What the check-in does is, especially if they're using a mobile device, is it will prompt them to check in, which pulls their location when they do the survey. Okay, so let's try that. I'm going to go home now, and I'm going to go to my activities, and let's do a couple of these. Okay, so let's pretend this was yesterday. So this is my February 7th poll. I'm going to activate it. Somebody responded. Don't worry about that. That's from yesterday. We'll activate this, and it's a question that I'm just asking for you guys to reply. Which do you like better, hot dogs, pizza, or Springsteen? Okay, we'll give people a chance, and this is a chance to make it kind of fun, right? So it's sort of a nonsensical question. Do attendance. You could do this very quickly once you've got the rhythm set up in your class. Okay. So you guys have now responded to my attendance question for February 7th, right? So let me go back and let's say it's a new day here at William and Mary, and we are going to do the February 8th attendance question. Which do you like better? Soda, beer, or rain when swimming in the ocean? Oh, beer is landslide. If I was taking it, I would be swimming in the ocean in the rain. That's my favorite. Okay, so you guys were all prompted, hopefully, to check in, correct? You were not? Adrienne, you were not. Okay, so that's interesting. We'll check up on this. Some of you were. Give me a thumbs up if you were prompted to check in when you took the poll.
I was prompted, but it says try it again because I can't locate me.
Are you doing it on the computer or on the mobile device?
On a computer.
All right, so this is going to be a great got you. If you do this on a computer and you're like me and I value my privacy, I do not let my web browser know where I am. Okay.
That's true.
So this is something that you would have to inform your students if they are doing it on the laptop. I think that the last time I looked at the numbers, the vast majority of students took these polls using a mobile device because they've always got their phones with them, right? And by default, the PollEV app has the location is passed along. So was anybody using a mobile device prompted for their location? We'll find out here in a second.
Pablo, Christy got told she's out of range, which tracks with
Oh,
where
I know.
she is.
I was hoping to extend the Boswell Hall
Uh-huh.
to be close enough to Christy, who's in the next building
She's in
over.
Jones, yeah.
But I guess it didn't reach. It didn't reach,
So
unfortunately.
this, just to clarify, then the students are unable to respond in theory if
No, you
they
can still
are.
respond if you are out of range. There's a button there
Okay.
that says reply, and we'll see. Hopefully,
Oh, okay.
we'll see how that works. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to my activities, and if you'll notice here, what I've done is I've created an attendance folder for my fictitious but much desired Geology 101 class that someday I will go back and teach. And in it, I have activities. The reason I've done this in a folder is because if you plan to integrate this into Blackboard, if you do each activity and merge that back into Blackboard, you're going to end up with a ton of columns, right? I don't know how many sessions your classes meet. If you're Tuesday and Thursday, maybe you're only once a week, it would be manageable. But if you're Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a whole semester, that's a lot of columns in Grade Center. So we're going to put them in this folder. And with all of these results in the folder, what we can now do is, and you get to select, do you do it 3 times a semester, 4 times a semester? Do you do it after each week, right? What you can do is check this little box next to my folder where my attendance activities are in. And I'm going to run hold on. Oh, am I missing it here? Oh, wait, where's my reports? Hold on. Interesting. Create report. I'm sorry. I'm having a senior moment. That's for your benefit, Briar. So I clicked on create reports and I'm going to do a gradebook report. I'm going to click on that and I'm going to create the report. Okay, this will take a second. And now what it's going to tell me is who it was in attendance and who participated. Okay, Briar, your question for Christy was she was outside of the range of the circle that I put in. So people still participated, but I guess I missed my circles for attendance and only one person was in attendance when they participated. Does that make sense? So you're not blocked from participating in a poll, but you're not necessarily marked as in attendance while you participated. Does that make sense to everybody? All right, and from here, once you run this report, as I said, you might run it like if I was teaching a Tuesday, Thursday class, I might run it every 2 weeks, right? So you're capturing 6 classes. So you end up with a manageable set of columns, and your students will be able to track how they are doing in attendance as well, because they'll see it in Grade Center. So what you're going to do at that point is I now have this report for 2 days. I will click on, or I'm sorry, for 3 polls actually. I will click export and um, oh, I'm sorry. I don't have this tied to a class right now. I could push it out to these test classes that I have. So I could do, this is a class that I have in Blackboard called Poll Everywhere Test Environment. And I could send it to the Grade Center. And now you would see it in Blackboard. Students could check up on to make sure how they're doing with participation. And this grade aggregated this way, calculated this way, becomes much easier if you are using it, for instance, to assign participation grades, for instance, based on attendance, or that goes into that calculation. So that's it for the demonstration. I'm open to taking questions. It's, as I said before, it's not a tool for everybody. It might be a little bit of an acquired taste, but there are definitely courses that this might be a great solution for tackling attendance in classes. So let me stop sharing this, and unless people have questions about any particular aspect of this, it's a small group, so feel free to unmute yourself and ask away if you have any questions at this point. Got a quiet crowd.
Hey, Pablo, I'm just wondering what your suggestion is for, like I didn't have location accuracy on my phone, so I just signed in, I just did the poll without signing in. I imagine some students might take issue with turning, the location accuracy on their phones.
Yes, that is definitely, that could be a concern. I mean, I think, so the app, the Poll Everywhere app, does not track you. It's basically it's a quick punch, right? It's here's where I am when I answered this question. That's all that check-in does. And it persists for a session that I can't remember the exact amount of time, but it's long enough for you to participate in everything that's being done in probably an hour and a half session. It might be a little bit longer, but you shouldn't have to check in again. Now, when you leave your class, your location is not being tracked, it's not being followed. I think, Kat, it would be important to discuss this with your students as to what this is doing, because I am guessing that it would raise some concerns, yes. And as I said before, like for instance, the first time I tried this, it didn't work for me because my web browser and my computer does not share my location from the web browser. It's much easier, I think, if you're going to have the recommendation for students is to use their mobile devices, their phones, if they can, just because that app, you quit it and it's done. And all you've done is provided your geolocation for the classroom that you're supposed to be in. So, but yes, I imagine that this is a concern, and it would definitely be worth discussing it the first time you use this in the classroom.
Thanks, Pablo.
No problem.
Pablo, can you talk about how we could use Poll Everywhere for attendance without the geo tracking on?
So it basically is exactly what we did right now, right? And there are lots of people who do attendance right now without this geolocation feature. Before I answer your question, Briar, is why has Poll Everywhere rolled this out? My guess would be because, believe it or not, and this has happened at William and Mary, students will be passed information so that they can participate in Poll Everywhere questions when they are not in class. And this has happened for sure. There was one instance where a faculty member was incensed enough, maybe is the question, that a student had been replying and they were clearly not in the classroom. So somebody in the classroom was going, answer B on this question, answer B, because they were low stakes, which, Poll Everywhere should never be used for high stakes assessments, but they were doing low stakes assessments. And students were basically being passed the answers. And I think that eventually, I think IT was able to figure out that the students were responding from New York somewhere. So our William and Mary students, they are the ultimate sort of Dudley Do-Right students. Most likely not a very common or big concern, But, Polo Everywhere works with much bigger institutions with different populations where this might be a much bigger issue, right? So that's why this feature has been generated, the geofencing one. How do you do this without it? There are plenty of faculty members who have used Polo Everywhere for attendance, and I'll show you an example. I think I have one. Oh, shoot. Oh, here's one. So what kind of animal is on my shirt, right? And so, it could be something like this, or it could be something that you project on the screen. And you do this, and the students who are in attendance respond. And there's a correct or an incorrect answer to this, right? And there could be, you could figure out all sorts of different ways to ask this question. There might be a little bit of a kink in this, in that, visually impaired people might be at a little bit of a disadvantage, but maybe you could bark for the correct answer and make it more multimodal. So this is, Briar, this is how you would do it. The whole process, except for the geofencing, the geolocation thing, you would just leave that off, and everything else is done in the same way. Again, I wanted to present the new feature in case anybody was hip to it. I know that we have some people from VIMS. It could be that this was done, let's say that it was supposed to be done by students in a remote location, and you want to make sure that people who are responding are actually there. This could be actually an interesting feature to look at. You gotta get that fence built in the right spot, right? And like, for instance, Christy, I'm sorry I missed you in Jones Hall. But yeah, you can do it without it. It's less invasive for sure. And we know, I think, from experiences during the pandemic, that some students don't really appreciate that kind of big brother aspect, or the perception of that. So we've got a few minutes left. Any other questions? Briar, were you able to share that that link, the PDF? So if anybody has not integrated Pull Everywhere into their Blackboard courses, that PDF document that Briar sent you should be great. It'll be at the end of this slide presentation also as a link in case you didn't grab it. I'd love to hear your feedback about this. Here's a QR code. You can scan it with your phone if you still have it handy. That's it. That's all I got for you folks.